Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Alex DeMartian, a game studies professor and professional game developer. And today I want to kind of expand on something that every person, especially those in the creative fields, will experience, and that's rejection. I think because I am a college professor and I also sort of take part in rejecting people as somebody who works at a game studio, it has a special place in my way of thinking and in my life, which also brings me a little bit of anxiety because I would love to give everyone a job, but I would also love all of my students who are incredible people, help them get a job, right? And the truth is, like, as a college professor from freshman year to senior year, you build a big relationship with your students. So a lot of times, whether it's in a person's career, relationships, or personal ambitions, rejection can feel, you know, essentially, it feels a lot like a personal attack. It can trigger fear, self doubt, and even descent into isolation. Now, when rejection hits, it's easy to withdraw from the world, and I've seen that happen many times. And it can make you feel like you're not enough, like the effort you put in wasn't valued, or that you've been left behind. But the real danger isn't rejection itself, it's how we respond to it. Now, I live in Chicago, and I'm in downtown Chicago quite often. And a lot of times I'll just sit around or I'll be walking, I'll be looking at all these people. And in my mind, I'm like reminding myself that all of these people are experiencing something right now. Some of them maybe lost their parents. Some of these people lost a job. Some people are fear of losing their job or they're having a disconnect with their children. Everyone is going through something. And so you have to be careful not to get stuck in this myopic state where you're thinking it's all about you and the world is about you, which makes sense because we're looking through the camera of our own eyes. Now, for me, I've been working on building or developing a personal recovery system for dealing with rejection. And it's helped me a lot to navigate the moments without losing sight of the people I love, the work I believe in, and the future I'm building. And it's a pretty simple system, and I'm going to share it with you. Now, just to kind of give you context, there's an emotional trap for rejection. Rejection isn't just painful, it's deceptive. It distorts your perspective. And a lot of times, like, say you're going through a bad breakup, you'll hear people say things like, oh, psychologists say that it's attributed to almost like somebody dying in your family. You'll never see them again because it's someone you loved and you're gone. So the feelings are the same. And then you see that as a lens of failure. And a lot of times my students will end up, and myself and everyone through life, we end up in this loop, right? Where, say, you have a friend and you're always like, why is this person always ending up in bad relationships? And the thing behind that is, as human beings, we want to fix what was not, that we feel was broken or that was lost. So if you were in a bad relationship, you'll often date somebody who was just like the person before. And then you'll end up in that same relationship again, trying to fix the one in the past. So you end up in this never ending loop. And within that, that constant bombardment and of like going through and failing and constantly failing, you start to see everything in your life through the lens of failure. And then, as I mentioned, you become quite myopic. So you focus on the pain and that you lose sight of everything else. And then you start to shut out people of your life, right? And the people who love you. And the truth is, to get out of that loop is you have to actually exit the loop and try something different, or talk to people who are different, or just stop dating altogether, or applying for the same type of job and just focus on looking at what your strengths are and maybe pivoting. I myself wanted to be a character artist more than anything in the world. They were the quarterback of the video game industry, but I couldn't get a job to save my life. A really great art director saw in me that I had these really great assets and environments, and he gave me a shot in that direction. And people were giving me terrible advice. They were saying, you should oftentimes just wait for the job you want before you're doing something else. And that's not true. In my opinion, take what you can get and grow in that position, and then spend your leisurely time growing even more. And so one of the most dangerous effects of rejection is that it makes us insular, right? We retreat inward, trying to figure out what went wrong. We push away our friends and family, not because we don't love them, but because we're consumed by our own doubts. And it's important that you spend a lot of time working on your ability to be discerning, or discernment, right? And you'll hear that a lot in Christian faith, is like, work on your discernment, right? And what does that really mean? It just means choose your words and your thoughts wisely. So it's natural to go through a period of reflection after rejection, but that alone is like time that can either be a path to clarity or a tunnel that traps you in a negativity. Now, if you reflect with purpose, you grow, right? If you reflect without direction, you sink. So I want to really push that point, right? You want to reflect with purpose so you grow, right? So as you're during this insular time where you just want to reject the world because you're in so much pain, you want to focus on how you can grow, right? And a lot of times, like I had a friend recently, and they went through a pretty bad breakup, and they went back, got in shape, got a great career, got money. They met somebody even better than before, and that person came back to them, and they were even contemplating going back to this person who treated them horribly because they wanted to fix that mistake, right? It's the same thing with jobs. You might work at a terrible company, and then your boss was cruel to you, and you're like, I want to go back and run that company and be that. And the reality is, no. Like a lot of times, we move on to better things, and for some reason inside of us, we don't accept that we are in a much better situation without that nonsense. And again, if you reflect without direction, that means you just sit in your own loneliness, you sink. This is why you must be very careful, again, discernment about the things you say and do during this time where you're like in this insular world. Words have power, right? You hear people talk about Adolf Hitler was able to control an entire country with just so a few words to hate another group of people, which was horrible, right? Words have power. And if you constantly speak defeat, self pity, and fear, you create a reality of those things for you and for others. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's constantly that way. And again, you might be a very articulate person. And so you might be talking about how miserable the world is. And you might turn people away from really great paths, right? Because you're sharing your pain. When the reality is you just want to share your love and you want people to love you. It has nothing to do with your pain. And there's actually a Proverbs. I love Proverbs. So just forgive me if I'm always quoting these, but it's 18:21, right? Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. So, what does this mean? That means the things you say about yourself, about your rejection, about your future will shape your reality. Be discerning about who you are, who you talk to, and how you talk about your situation. If you only vent to people who feed into your frustration, you'll stay stuck, right? And I have a personal family member who seeks out people who share their misery, and it really kills me on the inside because I love this person and they're absolutely incredible, a lot smarter than me. But again, I don't know. They seek out others who share that, and I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm trying to be just paint a picture that maybe that's not the best path. And again, if you constantly tell yourself that you're not good enough, you'll start believing it and you'll start acting in that way. I would go to these conventions and I would meet people. And I met this one guy, and I was doing like a simple job, and he was like, I had a job at the time that was really to me not anything great, and he had so much self doubt and lowing, and his posture was terrible. He's like, man, I wish I was smart enough to do. And the guy was perfectly normal, and the job I was doing at the time didn't require any specific skill that he couldn't attain. And with him, if you let bitterness take over, you'll push away the people who would help you heal. So I offered to provide help, and he didn't want it, right? He just was like, no, I'm just not good enough. So the way that you get around this is instead you want to organize your self-reflection, right? Like this is again, everything is in our head, right? So set a time limit on isolation, right? Take time to be alone, but don't let it become endless. A day or two process is fine. A month shutting out the world, that's really dangerous, right? You don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So you have to force yourself to get out of that loop, to go find people, to go find industry people. And what you find is I would take time away from people for such a long time, and inside of my head, I had these false expectations. Right, I'd be like, I can't. I used to be really skinny and great shape and going to the gym, and then when I went into my isolation mode, I stopped going to the gym. I gained a bunch of weight. People don't want to see me anymore. They're gonna see me and judge me as fat. And then I showed up like to hang out with my friends. They were all overweight because it was the winter, and we all kind of did that. We're all self isolated. So I like took time away from these people I love and who love me and could have made me speed up my healing because I had this false sense of reality. Another thing I do quite often is I love journaling. Like journal instead of ranting, and then reflect back on these journal entries. And I'm like, oh my God, like was reflecting on journals from 10 years ago. I was like, my life is so much better now. And I was so concerned and I thought that everything was the end of the world. So instead of spreading negativity in conversations, write things down, journal, let your release emotions without poisoning your environment. I've read somewhere, and I don't know the power behind this, maybe this helps, but some people just journal to God because they don't know who to write to. So it's almost like a journal of letters. If you're not religious, again, you just journal to get things out of your head and out of your heart. And then talk to people who will challenge you, not just comfort you, right? I have a good friend. Man, he's too hard on me, I feel like sometimes, but he really does tell me how it is, and I know he's operating from a place of love, so it doesn't damage our relationship. So I seek out friends, really, or mentors who won't just agree with me. who won't just agree with my pain, but will also push me towards growth. Overall, I just want to say, you want to shift your focus from fear versus faith, right? So rejection can make you fearful that you're not enough, that you'll never succeed, or that you'll make the wrong choices going forward. But fear really is, again, to me, it's just a lack of faith in what's ahead, right? And again, in Matthew 6:26, I mentioned this in the last video. Look at the birds of the air, for they neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? Say you're not interested in the religious aspect of this. I used to deliver food with my dad and my uncles and my family with the Greater Food Depository. They had so much food that was donated by these corporations that are deemed evil, which maybe they do have evil qualities, and maybe some of the food, we had lots of fresh vegetables and meat and stuff, but they also provided cereals and milks and bags of sugar and cakes and stuff that we gave out to the poor. In the United States, and hopefully in other countries, and I pray for this for everyone, there seems to be like an abundance of like, and I don't like that word because it's connected to some self-help or weirdo movements, but there seems to be a lot of help. There seems to be a lot of places you can go for food. Again, it's not a perfect country. My heart bleeds for those who have mental health conditions. I don't think we're providing enough for them. But if you're a person and you're working towards a goal and you have a student and you're surrounded by love, you will be provided for. Just give that love back. But if you let fear take over, you'll never see that new path of opening for you. So I know we're getting to 11 minutes. This is getting a pretty long video, but really overall, I just want to really cover my recovery system for rejection. So after dealing with rejection many times, like this is sort of the way I do it. I feel the disappointment, but I don't dwell in it. It's okay to acknowledge the pain, but I don't let it become my identity, right? I didn't get this job, or a breakup happened. I try to write it down, and then I try to let it go. That's the hardest part, right? Journaling about rejection, what happened, what I can learn from it, and how I can move forward. Then I leave it there instead of carrying it into conversations. And inside that journal, I'm also, like when I'm journaling, I'm kind of coming up with a plan, right? Like, okay, I was rejected from this job because they felt like my character skills didn't match their art style. Well, let's come up with a plan. And if I'm not excited about that plan, then maybe that's not the company for me, because there are a lot of companies. And a lot of times we could feel very insular. We're like, this is the only company we can do. And then always do something physical, right? Exercise, take a walk, move your body, do your bed. I know that's become cliche at this point, but do your bed. This stops the mental spiral of overanalyzing. And honestly, if you wake up and 3 o'clock in the morning, you can't go back to sleep and you're festering, get up, go for a walk, go do some work, go do some artwork, do whatever you need to. And then make up the sleep during the day. Take an hour nap here or there. You don't have to sit in the dark at 3 o'clock in the morning and self-hour. A lot of times I make these videos at 4 or 5 in the morning. And then you always want to redirect your energy into something productive. Start a new project, help a friend, or shift your focus to creation instead of contemplation. If you could find a group of people who are like-minded, a group of people with a common set of values and beliefs, a church, an art group, or whatever, there's these things called drink-in draws. I'm not a big drinker like for alcohol, just because I didn't like the way it feels and it always makes me bloated and fat. But I love just going and sitting with other artists and watching them draw. And then I would just draw. And they never judged my work. They just wanted to go somewhere to be with people. And some of the best connections I made in the industry are from these hangouts. And then recenter on faith and purpose. So if you believe in prayer, pray, meditate, and remind yourself of the bigger picture of life. You always be grateful. Like, I have a beautiful wife, a beautiful life, a beautiful house. Right now I'm going through this terrible legal situation that seems to be dragging on forever. It's going to end eventually. And it's nothing I did. It's just I bought into this situation. And so it's not essentially, again, I'm not going to have there's no negativity that's going to come to me, right? All I'm doing is losing time. There's no criminal intent against me. I have a little bit of loss of money because I have to hire a lawyer. But in the end, I've become closer to my family and God because they've supported me through it. And through that, like, when I reflect back on it, I'm going to be like, oh, I get it. That was the whole point behind this nonsense. Again, you're going to be in some really deep moments and you're going to need those people. So here's my final thoughts. Rejection is not about you being unworthy. It's about reshaping you for the better. Don't let it consume you. Don't let it isolate you. And don't let it make you bitter. Instead, use rejection as fuel. Fuel for growth, fuel for faith, and fuel for becoming stronger than ever before. And always remember, you are exactly where you need to be. So stay bold, stay faithful, and keep moving forward. Thank you, and please keep creating. I can't wait to see what your projects are. Take care. Bye bye.